Hello, and welcome to Today. Today, the fourth week of the question and answer series. The rules that we've established are still apply, and go ahead with the first question, please.
How can we deal with problems of racism in America?
Racism. I would deal with racism in the following way. I would try and educate every person alive on the planet today, which is approximately, I think, 11 billion. I would ask you to trace back your family line to the beginning. And I would say you've probably heard your aunt or your mother or your grandmother talk about the Great Flood. Every religion, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, and one that I've forgotten, they all acknowledge that there was a great flood, that it covered the earth, and that it killed every single man, woman, and child alive at the time. Now, how could we be here today? We're here today because a man named Noah built a boat called the Ark, as God instructed him to, and he put 2 of everything on that Ark. Personally, I wish he'd left out mosquitoes. I wish he'd left out ants. I wish he'd left out cockroaches like little d, little t, and HC. I wish he'd left those cockroaches out. But God saw fit that everything has a function in this earth. Every animal that's alive today has a function. And it's just like every person alive today has a function. And you need to find out what your function is, because if you're not working in your function, your special purpose, as Steve Martin said in The Jerk, you're miserable, you're not productive, you're just killing time until you die. You do realize that there is a line. I know most of you are scatterbrain thinkers, but there is a line from birth until death. It's linear, it's limited in length, and if you're not enjoying every day of it like I do, you're missing out, because I'm loving what I do. And when I'm President of the United States, I'm going to be the happiest president ever. I'm going to be, as the psychiatrists describe, on top of the world. Now, normally psychiatrists want to treat you if you're on top of the world, but I'm not going to let them. I'm going to have a psychiatrist assigned to me, and I've got one picked out, Dr. David Scott from Nashville, Tennessee. He works for the Veterans Administration, which means he works for me on January 20th, and he is going to be my constant companion. And anybody out there in America who thinks I'm acting mentally ill can call Dr. David Scott. His number will be published, and ask him, is the president mentally ill? Now, there's nothing wrong with being a mentally ill president. You've only got to be 3 things to be president. You've got to be at least 35 years of age, you've got to be a naturalized citizen, and you have to have lived in the United States for 14 continuous years. Now, only one of the 3 candidates has published their birth certificate. Little d, little t made such a big deal about Barack Obama's birth certificate. Why hasn't he published his? I'll answer that question at another time. There is a reason, and it has to do with his birth. Little h, little c hasn't published her birth certificate because she's too GD arrogant. She doesn't think she has to. She's HC. Ridiculous. Publish your birth certificate, you two friendly people. Racism. So we go back to the flood and the boat. Now, who were the people on the boat? It was Noah, the faithful builder of the ark, his wife, his 3 sons, and their 3 wives. Now, I know what you're thinking. I saw Noah at the movie theater and the boys were single. Well, that's a Hollywood make-believe lie. I don't know that there's any Jew in Hollywood that knows the Bible, so I don't know why they're making movies about it. Noah had his 3 sons. If you read the Bible, it says Noah got drunk, and the 3 sons came upon him, and 2 of them turned and went away, and one stayed and looked. Don't stay and look. That caused one race to have some serious problems. I'm not going to say which one. So there were 8 people alive in the world, 8 people alive on the earth at the end of the flood when the dove came to the ark and the ark came to Mount Arafat and settled down to dry land. Noah and his wife never had any more children, so let's push them to the side. Noah got drunk, got naked. Hell, it's something every man in America's done at some point in his life. And Prince Harry in Las Vegas. Now, I love you, Prince Harry, and I especially loved your mother and Prince William, and I loved your mother. You'll never know how much. So then we have the 3 sons of Noah. Who were they? They were Seth, Japheth, and Ham, and their wives. Every human being alive today came from one of those 3 couples. Let me repeat that. Every human being alive today came from one of those 3 couples. If you can prove differently to me, I will give you a portrait of I'm drawing a blank. Benjamin Franklin. I'll give you a portrait of Benjamin Franklin if you can prove different to me. Now, where did Ham go? Ham went to Africa, and he was the father of what we know today, the African race and the African American race. Where did Seth go? He went to Asia, and he was the father of the Asian race. Where did Japheth go? He went to Caucasia. Now this is going to shock a lot of you, but near Russia is a region called Caucasus, and that's where Caucasian came from. It's white people, white because there's no sunlight in that region. It's like 364 days of clouds and darkness, so you have no pigment. In Africa, you had to develop pigment to keep from being burnt alive. In Asia, for some reason, you developed a slightly slanted eye. I don't know why. It just happened. It's natural selection, or it's evolution. Evolution is not a creation story. It's a continuation story. It's how we continue to evolve. And some of us are not evolving at all. We're going backwards because we're doing stupid things that kill us. So if you realize that every single person alive on the earth today is a cousin, maybe you want to feud with your family, but I don't. I want to accept all my family. Now, one last word. Whenever you see somebody else and you hate them or you don't like them or they irritate you or something like that, what you see in them that causes you to hate them is what you hate about yourself. So if you, for whatever reason you hate black people, it's because you hate something about yourself that's black. I would get some counseling or do some soul searching. There's no reason to hate black people.
As president, what's your plan to deal with ISIL?
My plan to deal with ISIS and ISIL is as follows. The United States is used to doing warfare in the manner of the British Army. The British Army would march a column, and they would meet your column, and you would shoot at each other, and whoever was the best shot won that skirmish. And whoever won the most skirmishes won the battle, and whoever won the most battles won the war. And we've been doing that. The Civil War, we did it in pretty much in Vietnam. All of World War II was that. If you've ever seen a map of the conflict in Europe in World War II, there was Panzer Division here, MacArthur Division here, Patton Division here, and it was all like lines of soldiers. And you broke through those lines to get. Have you ever heard the term behind enemy lines? How can you get behind enemy lines if there's no lines? There are lines. Perhaps one of the greatest skirmish victories in the history of warfare came when American patriots were facing, glad to know they're on the job. God bless that crew, Blue Line crew. So when the British got the upper hand, the Americans started to retreat, and their commander gave some command like column, retreat. And so they did an about face, and they started retreating with the British troops in tow. Now it's who can march faster, I guess, as far as who's going to win. If the Brits can march faster, they're going to overtake the retreating American column. If the Americans can march faster, they're going to escape the British, because apparently they were too far to shoot a musket to hit them. But this American commander, and I wish I had his name right now, and I've known it at one time, but I don't know it right now. I'm sure you can find it. This American commander, as he's retreating, gave these orders. Soldiers, unshoulder muskets. And so the muskets came down into the loading position. Soldiers, load muskets. So they took their flask of powder and put it down the barrel. They put their ball there. They took their ramrod, got it ready, stored the ramrod. Shoulder weapons. So they shouldered them again. Soldiers, halftime march. So now we started marching half speed. We know the British are going to catch us, but we've got a plan for it. So then as they can hear the British footsteps, they know they're within musket range. Soldiers, halt. Soldiers, about face. Soldiers, fire. And they unleashed musket balls on that British column. And the people that record history said not a shot was fired from the British, because they were dealing with blood and bone and eyeballs all over their faces and their bodies. They surrendered. The ones that weren't killed were surrendered immediately. Now, what does that have to do with ISIS? ISIS has changed the mode of warfare, and we call it house to house. We have to go house to house to fight them. And as we're going from house to house, they are blowing the limbs off of our soldiers, both men and women, sailors, Marines, Coast Guard, Air Force. They're blowing their limbs off. Well, healthcare is so good in the United States, we're saving their lives, and they're a constant reminder of how stupid we are. Not for putting them in the service. We appreciate their sacrifice and service, and we should tell them that. And you should tell them in that exact way. I appreciate your sacrifice and service. For those of you that just spit out, I appreciate your service, why don't you go to TGI Fridays, eat lunch, and tell your waiter that you appreciate his service? Because that's what you're saying. When you say I appreciate your sacrifice, you're taking into account their family, them, their children, the dead ones. That's what you appreciate, their sacrifice and their service. Now, I was just saying sacrifice, and I was corrected by a double amputee at the VA in Nashville who said, "Sir, I am still serving." Well, I didn't know that. I thought once you had your limbs blown off, the Army, Air Force, Marines, Air Force, all of the services, I thought they were through with you. But they're not, and I applaud that. We need that kind of spirit in the military of, yeah, I'll lose a leg or two, but I'm still gung-ho. I'm still hoorah! And that's for you Army boys. So What we have to do with ISIS is we have to get China to manufacture cheaply a bunch of Hellfire missiles. I don't care if Boeing or Grumman or any of the other military-industrial complex of this country thinks that they're the only ones that can make Hellfire missiles. I guarantee you the Chinese know how to make a Hellfire missile. They might call it a chicken. They might call it something else, but it's still a Hellfire missile. And I'm going to get Walmart to pay for them. Why? Because they need to. They need to support this country. They've skipped out on enough things. They've screwed over Sam Walton long enough in enough different ways. And I used to fly around with Sam Walton, George Jenkins, and Kemmons Wilson in Kemmons Wilson's jet. As far as I know, he's the only one that could afford a jet. And I know you're sitting there saying, all except for his family, who is Kemmons Wilson? Kemmons Wilson is the founder of Holiday Inns. He's the one that gave you a $6.50 room when you were a kid on vacation and a swimming pool. Probably no man in the history of the United States has given more joy to more kids than Kemmons Wilson, and the hamburger and the chocolate milkshake and the fries to go with it. So Walmart pays for them, China makes them, and I put them down the exhaust vent, kitchen exhaust vent of every ISIS house that's identified by snitches. Now in this case, snitches they're not gonna get U.S. currency. That is about the stupidest thing I ever heard of, because that U.S. currency just comes back to kill Americans and French and Belgium, whatever they are. And I'm gonna give them their local currency, $100,000 to tell me where a member of ISIS or ISIL lives. The coordinates. Give me the coordinates. Use your handheld GPS or your iPhone and tell me the house. And if you make a mistake, I'm not going to hold you responsible. I'm sorry. Oops, my bad. I am going to send a Hellfire missile down the exhaust vent of any house that has been identified by a snitch as being an ISIL or ISIS member. It's going to kill Granny, Nanny. It's going to kill Boobala. It's going to kill your brother, your sister. It's going to kill every person in that house. So I'm going to eliminate ISIS this generation and generations to come. And I'm going to give $100,000 in local currency, even if it takes a pickup truck to do it, to the person who ratted you out. That's how I'm going to handle ISIS.
How can felons who have been convicted start life over?
I have a plan for felons who want to start life over. Our prisons are way too crowded, and our prisons are way too profitable for Correction Corporation of America, and way too profitable for local officials that make it easy for local law enforcement to arrest people of minority descent and have a disproportionate number in the prison. The first thing I'm going to do is have a complete review from top to bottom by my Justice Department lawyers and my U.S. Marshals what is going on in the damn prisons. Because whatever's going on is not what should be going on. And that is going to be spearheaded by Lieutenant Steve Dean of the Henry County, Tennessee Sheriff's Department. He knows prisons. He's run one for 30 years. He will help me find out what's going on in the prison and fix it. Now, felons, if you're lucky enough to get out, and I hope you are, you will wait 7 years and you will be restored fully your rights as a United States citizen. That's right from the Bible. In the Bible, everything renews every 7 years, and you need to be able to renew in 7 years too.
What is your plan to take better care of veterans, including disabled vets?
I have a plan to take care of vets and disabled vets. I am a 100% disabled Vietnam veteran with a brain injury. I think you can tell that I'm operating with a brain injury. And the good news is I've been deemed to be highly functional. The VA has tested my IQ, and my IQ is 186. I think you detect that too in my plans. So I'm very aware of the VA. I have been treated in the VA at Bay Pines, Florida, in Orlando, Florida, in Chattanooga, Tennessee, in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, in Nashville, Tennessee. There may be some more that I've forgotten. Those must have been the good ones. My plan is, if I am elected President of the United States of America, I am going to offer to little h, little c, the position of Director of Veterans Affairs, or Director of the Veterans Administration. I'm going to pay her the same amount of money that I make, and I'm going to give her unlimited access to Warren Buffett's NetJets. She can get the jet that's the size that she needs to accomplish her mission that day. And she'll be responsible to fly throughout the United States. Veterans will have the same credit card that everyone else has. They'll be able to get their health care from any doctor, any health care provider. They'll be able to get their apartment, their Section 8 apartment with that same card, just like the other Americans. They'll be able to get their prescription drugs. They will not be able to get generic drugs. I will issue an executive order making generic drugs illegal in the United States of America. We are not going to give veterans drugs that were mixed in a bathtub and mislabeled, and just don't make me go on and on about that. There's not going to be any generic drugs in the United States. There's only going to be first name, prime name, Bayer, whatever the rest of them are. That's the drugs that are going to be available in the United States. And they'll be available with that card. You don't have to wait and get it from the VA. That bank of Cray computers will know more about what you're doing, will know more about your health care, will know more about your medicine than you know, because they are $3 million computers that can process gazillions of bits of information per second.